Support for the CivicSciTV network comes from listeners and viewers like you, and organizations such as the Rita Allen Foundation, which invest in transformative ideas in their earliest stages to leverage their growth and promote breakthrough solutions to significant problems. Go to ritaallen.org to learn more.
Mapping the ongoing work across the civic science landscape by characterizing the why, what, how, who, when, and where through talking directly with practitioners in academia, government, for-profit, and nonprofit organizations. I'm Fanuel Muindi, and this is Questions of the Day.
Previously on Questions of the Day.
Following along, we've known for a long time that trust in science, at least in the places where it has been measured, is pretty good. One of the real strong points of this paper is it pushed a lot further as to where places where we measured. Because it went global, and particularly went global south.
Right.
So it's not just the US and Europe and maybe Japan, maybe China. It's 68 countries.
Right.
So that, just the amount of work it took to do that is amazing.
Subscribe to access that conversation and many more.
I'm Dr. Rose Basom, your local scientist reporting in from the Science Museum of Virginia.
And I'm Fanuel Muindi, talking with Dr. Rose Basom, the David and Jane Cohn scientists at the Science Museum of Virginia. Now, the museum inspires curiosity through experiential exhibits, interactive labs, makerspaces, and so much more. Dr. Basom joined the Science Museum in October 2023, and she oversees science content, ensuring it's accurate, compelling, and reaches all audiences. And that's what we talk about, with an emphasis on their theory of change on engaging diverse audiences and the plugging point for collaborations for folk such as science communicators, funders, civic science scholars, scientists, and many others. This was a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to engaging other museums as well. Check it out. Rose, welcome to Questions of the Day.
Thank you so much, Fanuel, for having me here on the show.
Now, I'm going to tell folk that we go way back, actually, right? To the days when you had applied to the incubator that I started, and now you've gone on to bigger and better things, of course. Could you give us a 10,000-foot view of the museum with respect, especially to your public engagement programming that is present?
Yeah, so the Science Museum of Virginia is the state's science museum. And it's really amazing because we have a lot of different programming going on here at the museum. One of the big things that we have for adults, for example, we have Science on Tap. That's a 21 and up event where we have adults that can experience the exhibits, have a couple of beverages, but we also have family-oriented events as well. So we also offer Science After Dark, and that's an opportunity to come to the museum after hours, so after 5:00 p.m., where we have special themes each time. So we recently did one called Superhero Science, and we have activities that are revolved around that theme and give family members a chance to come in after work with their families and get to experience the museum in the evening time and have some fun with a different theme each time.
So it sounds like there's a lot going on. Could you just give us, what is the theory of change around all these programs? What is uniting them to?
So our mission is to inspire all Virginians. And so we take that very seriously. So whether that's for adults or for families, or making sure that our museum is accessible for all, we take that very seriously. And that really guides us in how we do our programming each year.
Yeah. So you mentioned the word accessibility. Can you tell us more about that? How do you ensure that your program is accessible to as many of the Virginians, right, that are coming to the museums?
Yeah, so we have an initiative called Science Within Reach, and that encompasses a number of different activities and programming. So for example, we have things called Senior Mornings, and so that's working with our older population and providing different activities where they can engage and enjoy their time at the museum. So recently we had ornament making, where we featured different flowers and plants that came from our museum grown on our green campus. But we also do walks around our green campus every single week, and so activities like that. But we also offer other programming. So we also We also offer programming where people who maybe experience overstimulation at a museum, coming to the museum during busy hours, they have specific times that they can come in each month, where they can experience the museum where it's not as busy. And we also provide maps that show you where you may experience bright flashing lights or experience loud stimuli, so you can plan your museum experience accordingly. We also try to incorporate these tenets of science within reach, even in exhibit design as well. So we are opening a new gallery called Orbits later this year, and we have taken those principles from science within reach to ensure that our exhibits and our experiences are accessible to as many people as possible. And so that can range from tactile images for those who are of low vision or experience vision loss, to be able to experience astronomical objects with their fingers and accompanying audio, things like that. So these are just a smattering of the different experiences that we have going on to help think about accessibility and how we're reaching all of our audiences.
And how are you reaching them? Can you tell us who is actually coming to the museum?
Yeah, so I think, this is obviously a very general metric, but I think it really speaks to the work that we're doing here at the museum. So in the past year, our museum's attendance has reached an all-time record. So we surpassed 500,000 visitors last year. And so we're hoping to continue growing that through all of these initiatives, programming, and accessibility that we offer here at the museum.
Yeah. So when you think about the exhibit, someone might be listening to this later and say, okay, could you just give us the 101 about exhibit design, and how do you get it from concept to actually being in the museum? Can you just give us the 101?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally speaking, obviously this is going to vary from gallery to gallery, but the one we most recently worked on was Orbit. So it's all about experiencing space from a sci-fi sort of field, right? So that's the artistic design, and that's how we engage our audiences and gain their curiosity and wanting to learn what's going on in the gallery. And so once we've decided that whole genre and area that we want to focus on, we focus on what is the story we want to tell within here. And so we want to focus on our solar system and how do we experience that. And what are some basic principles that we experience with space. And so we have what I think is a really engaging experience called We Are Star Stuff. And that's where people can stand in front of a screen and they learn about the different elements that make up their body and how that was sourced from within our universe. And so you can see your body as the elements within your body. So that makeup, that percentage makeup that your body's made out of. We also have, like I said, we call this sensing space. So it's a way to experience space other from, all right. I'm just going to stop here. Okay. So another way that we can experience space other than just visually is through tactile. So being able to touch things and being able to hear things. And so this is where the sensing space experience really comes in as well. So it's like, how do we experience space? So what we were able to do was model a couple of astronomical objects, such as black holes. We can feel a star being born in space. And this is modeled in 3 dimensions to be as scientifically accurate as possible. And there's also a group that we've partnered with called Chandra X-ray Laboratory that's out of Harvard. And they have an initiative that they did with the Smithsonian to convert all of the data from those images into sound. And so you're able to experience these objects as sound as well. So it's just a whole different way to experience space other than the visual images that people commonly think of when they think of space.
Now it sounds like, sorry to jump in there a little bit. It sounds like, there's multiple people involved in an exhibit design, right? And also getting it to the final product, if you will. Could you tell us 2 things? One, how are you engaging scientists in this process, right? Because you mentioned earlier you want to maintain accuracy, right, in the designing of exhibits. So scientists are first. And the second group, are the public ever involved in that exhibit design stage?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. So as far as the subject matter expertise, so I serve as one of the subject matter experts. Um, and what we do though is when there's areas that we want to make sure that are accurate that aren't within our wheelhouse, because I oversee a team of content specialists who help create content as well for this exhibit. But we're so lucky to have our own astronomer on staff who has been able to serve as a subject matter expert for this exhibit as well. So we've been really lucky to have that expertise on staff. But in the event that we don't necessarily have that expertise on staff, we have a number of universities and professors that we've worked with in the past that we can also get in touch with. So it's a really collaborative effort. It's not just stationed and housed within the museum. And so to your point about getting the community involved as well, we received a grant from Aztec and NASA, the Association of Science and Technology Centers, to work with the Virginia Department for Vision Impaired and Blind, to help collaborate with us on creating this experience to ensure that it's accessible for our audiences and that it's content that makes sense for them and that they understand the content and that it's something that's engaging for them as well. So we do work with a number of groups outside of our organization as we're developing these experiences.
And is that for every exhibit you have the public being involved?
So I can only speak to what I've worked on. But as far as I know, we do work with outside organizations as we're developing these experiences. So the public does get to weigh in on different experiences depending on what experiences we're developing.
So you mentioned the grant, right? That was through the ASTC. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that? So this grant allowed you to bring in the public, right, into that exhibit design stage. Can you tell us sort of what were your objectives and what did you learn through that experience?
Yeah, so we're still in the middle of the grant. So as far as like what we've learned, we'll have more information about that once we've gone through the evaluation period. But what the money has enabled us to do is facilitate the production of sensing space, and so that more accessible experience. And it's allowed us to work with the Department of Blind and Vision Impaired to get their input. And what's going to happen is once we've launched Orbit, what we're able to do is invite our audiences from the community who are vision impaired and who are blind to come and experience the exhibit and provide feedback as well, because that will help us understand any changes we might want to make in the future when we're developing future experiences. Just as, science, you have a hypothesis, you test that hypothesis, you see what happens, you reiterate. It's the same thing with exhibit design.
What is a question that you wish more of the public asked you, or scientists who we're working with asked you, in terms of in your role, in your capacity at the museum?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm a little bit biased, and I think I would love for more people to ask me about biological anthropology and what that means, because oftentimes people are like, oh, what's your degree in? What do you do? And I tell them biological anthropology, and I think they're like, okay, great. But I'm like, there is so much that covers, and there's so much that I can speak to that I would love to talk with people about. And I think they'd be surprised to see what it encompasses, because it could be anything from bone biology to paleontology to forensics to just a number of different things that I think the public would be interested in.
Yeah, and I think that if I think about the scientists themselves, a question could be how do they get involved, right? Museums are places where a lot of public engagement does take place, and a lot of scientists are looking for those opportunities. What would you tell them about the opportunities at your museum to get involved in some of the exhibits, right? Or are there other types of programs that they can get involved in that they may not know about?
Yeah, so I can speak to a couple of things we've done in the past that I wasn't personally involved with. This was before I arrived at the museum, but we've done some civic science opportunities with respect to climate science. So where we went out into the community and held these community forums where people learned about like people's thoughts and opinions throughout the community. And these were actual people who contributed to this this forum and this discussion to decide how they would allocate resources to help green our community or affect climate change within our community. So that's one example. And we went throughout the community and talked to a number of different people in multiple languages in these forums. Also, we've had an initiative called RV Air. So that was going out into the community, a version of community science where people could walk around and help test air quality to understand how climate change is affecting air quality in our outdoor urban areas.
Yeah.
And
So you're talking about citizen science, right? Participatory science. Sounds like there's programming around that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these were all grant funded. And so we're working on a couple of initiatives. Well, fingers crossed to see if we're able to get those programs going. But we definitely have things in the works.
Yeah, yeah. So on that note, actually, you mentioned if that, right? You use that word if. Can you just get us a sense of what are some of the hurdles in place that are hindering your ability to offer more programming, right?
I mean, as far as an institution, right? We're a mid-sized institution. And so obviously, you have to think about staffing and limits with that, with how much we can offer. We have really big events that draw crowds of 11,000 people. We have an event called Model Railroad, and over 3 days, we see over 11,000 people. And so that's kind of an all hands on deck event. And so thinking about all the different programs that we offer, we have to make sure that we have enough folks to be able to offer those programs. And obviously another thing is thinking about funding. I think people don't realize how much it costs to offer what people would perceive as a simple program. And so oftentimes that can run you millions of dollars very easily to run some of these programs that we talk about with civic science, community science, and those opportunities to engage. Those are oftentimes, awards of $1 million or more just to provide this program over a number of years.
Yeah. Now we hear funding constantly. Okay,
Yeah.
that funding is a major hurdle.
Yeah.
I wonder though, how about partnerships? Are there partnerships that can help sort of dent that need for funding or as much funding, right? And can you tell us about your partnership strategy? Because I'm thinking about science communicators, for example, who might be watching this later to say, ooh, I would love to figure out how I could collaborate, right, with the museum through your existing programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I encourage people to reach out to us if they're interested in partnering, because we're always looking for ways to connect with our community partners. We've connected with a lot of folks out into the community already, but we're always looking for more partners. And what I really focus on is, all right, if we're interested in these areas of content and providing programming in these areas, who else is already doing this in the community where we can join forces and make that foundation even stronger, right? I think oftentimes it's really important for people to get together, because if you're not getting together and you're not having these forums where people who are doing similar things are able to talk with each other, there's missed opportunities, right? You're just kind of doing things in a silo. You're all trying to do the same thing without realizing you're all doing it at the same time. So by being able to combine those forces, that human power, those funds together, it does make being able to provide those programs just a bit more within reach.
Now, is this something that the museum wants to do more of, to collaborate with science communicators and other practitioners in this space?
Yeah, so I think definitely we're always looking for people to help weigh in on the things that we're doing here at the museum. So whether it's content pieces we want advice on, that we don't necessarily have the expertise in-house, or if we're working on different collaborations and different experiences and programming here at the museum. For example, we have a program called Science on Tap, which I had mentioned earlier, that we're going to be doing in February, that is all about mystery at the museum. And so this is totally within my wheelhouse, but we also want to invite people from the community to help provide awareness for their institution, and also help provide content in which they're also strong in. So we're partnering with VCU, and we have a speaker coming in to talk about all things forensics. And hopefully we're able to have some students there provide some activities as well and provide awareness for their department. So we're always looking to collaborate with different folks in the community. And we are even getting involved with AI literacy. So that's the AI Day of Literacy is coming up in March. And so we're looking to partner with other folks who are involved with artificial intelligence in the community, who either want to help educate folks on what artificial intelligence is and help them feel more comfortable about it, or for people who want to get more involved and make it a career. What does that look like? So inviting those folks to our museum to have a platform, because museums are this third space where people can convene, and we're able to provide that bridge between all the science, all the research, and be able to translate that for our audiences to get them engaged and more excited and more comfortable, right? The more you know, the more comfortable you are with different concepts. And that's what I think we're here to do as an institution, is to inspire. I always say we're here to inspire, not to lecture. We're here to make this an engaging experience to make you want to learn more. And so if you're left wondering and you have a number of questions and you go to Google something, or you want to get more involved with an activity and you buy some sort of kit, then we know we've done our job, because we've inspired you to want to do more within whatever subject strikes your passion.
So there's a lot in there, right? In terms of the wonder and the awe. Now, the question that I always make a point to ask my guests is thinking about metrics and evaluation in particular, right?
Yeah.
So from what you just described, it sounds like there's a lot of things that you probably are tracking, right, out there. And I wonder, could you tell us maybe one or two metrics that maybe keep you up at night?
Ooh. I think we have a fabulous communications team, and some of the metrics that they track are on social media, right? Because we're not just doing things within the museum, we're trying to reach out to our audiences, and that may be on social media because folks aren't able to come to the museum. And so I think about the detailed metrics report that they send out, and so they track like what pieces of content are people identifying with, and what are those subject matters. And so I always have to think about this balance between what resonates with our audience, but what do we also want them to know? Because the things that get them excited aren't always the things that we should solely focus on, because there may be things that resonate with our audience that they have never even thought about and didn't know. And so it's striking that balance. And so that's something that I think about every single day, is like, where do we find that balance at, and making sure that we're engaging folks, but also helping inspire with different pieces of content they may not even be aware of.
Yeah, but I wonder though, from social media, I guess it's hard if you to ascertain inspiration, right? So I want to zoom in on for those who come into your space, right, who are attending, because I think that's the bread and butter. You want them to come into the museum, right, to explore the exhibits and do all the other things. What are you tracking there, and what could you share in terms of what you're learning?
Yeah, so we have a number of different ways. So this can range from membership surveys to see what's resonating with them. What do they like? What would they like to see more of? And we do take those into consideration, because we offer traveling exhibits, for example. Creating an exhibit is a lot of time, effort, and money. And traveling exhibits are a way for us to switch that up a little more easily while we're working on some of those more permanent galleries. And so when we see what's resonating with our audience, that influences the different kinds of traveling exhibits we bring in. So we have two areas where we bring in traveling exhibits. We have a larger gallery where we do these kind of summer large exhibitions. So this past summer, we brought in Bodies, the Anatomy of Happiness. But also we have in-house evaluation. And so they're a part of my team, where they go out and they are able to talk to guests and get that more individualized feedback. So one of the things we did was a meaning map. So, what does science mean to you? Because we wanted to see, like, what does science mean to them? What inspires them? What does science make them think of? And so creating these like individual personal maps helps give us insight into what they envision science to be, and maybe where we can help inspire them and surprise them at the museum with the content that we offer. So it can range anything from surveys to in-person one-on-one evaluations. We also have done charrettes with different groups. So we're working on, so I mentioned we have a green campus. So we have tens of acres that we are planning on turning into different green spaces. So we still have one phase left that we're finishing up. And so we had charrettes, so different like focus groups with members of the community to get their input on what they'd like to see from a green space and what gets them excited. And, we take all of their feedback into serious consideration and helping us develop a space for our community, because this space is free for everyone in the community. They do not have to pay to use that green space.
Yeah. Of course, they have to get there, right? But of course, you mentioned that you have the traveling one, right, where you go out into the community. Is that correct?
Oh, wait. Oh, no. The traveling exhibits are exhibits we offer at the museum, but we also have different school groups, and we also work with different programs. So we have the Blue Sky group. And so they provide all the transportation for people who are a part of their program, for all of the students, that brings them to the museum to have these experiences as well. And so the reason I bring that up was we had some funding from Lego to do like Be the Change. And so it was a way to use Lego to envision what you want to see in a green space. And so they were able to bring these students to the museum, and that's all paid for. They're not having to worry about transportation costs. They're not having to worry about all of those costs and barriers that might prevent them from coming to the museum. And then they're able to have this experience with Legos, envision what they want in a green. And that's actually going to be, their works are going to be featured in an upcoming exhibit that's opening February 1st, Towers of Tomorrow with Legos. And so you can see some of their visions, and we take all of the work that they have done and put that into consideration when developing this last part of our green space as well. So lots of input, and we do our best to try and bring the community to us by helping lower costs, lowering different barriers as well, like transportation.
Yeah, because there was a report that the ASDC had done looking at accessibility, right, for science centers. And that question really came from, I'm thinking of BioBus in New York, right, where they're going into the community, right, and so that provides other points of access, right? So you can imagine not all of them, even if you have a free accessibility or buses that are coming to the museum, you may have some people who might not be comfortable to come to the museum for whatever reason, right? Timing or some sort. So hence my question. I was curious if you have any programming that goes out into the community as well.
We do. So we try to go to a number of community events where we bring activities out there that are free for everyone to experience and come and learn about the museum. So we do a numerous amount of events within communities of different languages as well. So we try and expand our reach as much as possible through that sort of outreach as well.
Yeah. Now, earlier you mentioned you wish people asked you about your path and journey to get to what you're doing right now. So I want to ask you that question right now. How did you find yourself in this role? Can you give us the journey to get here?
Okay, I won't make it too long-winded because it's a very nonlinear path, and I don't want anyone out there to think that your career path has to be a straight shot. It's okay to find these different things along the way, because it's the diversity and the magnitude of those experiences that got me to where I am today. I didn't always know that I wanted to be in museums, but one of the early experiences I had, one of the first jobs that I had was at a museum, at a natural history museum. And I fell in love with that, but I knew that museums were quite difficult to get into. So I kind of put that out of sight, out of mind. And I was really interested in becoming a forensic anthropologist. But along the way, I found myself working a number of different jobs, whether that was working at the USDA in a microbiology lab, cloning peanuts and cotton, or working for a medical examiner as a death investigator. But what all of those experiences entailed was talking to audiences about what we did, outside audiences, even at the medical examiner, providing autopsy demonstrations to medical health professionals and to law enforcement. Those were the experiences I really resonated with. I loved museums. I love being able to talk to audiences and explain to them, what we're doing, why it's important, and be able to translate the work that we do into an experience that they can identify with. And so I think that path led me to wanting to get a PhD because I was interested in potentially working in collections at a museum. And I was able to achieve that. But once I got there, I had a number of experiences with reaching out to the public, whether that's, showing objects from the back of collections or giving expertise to different TV shows about the stuff that we had on display. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed being able to translate the science because I was like, as much as I enjoy the research that I do, I personally feel like if we're not able to get the public engaged with the work that scientists are doing, how are we expecting them to support what we do in the future? And so it's the public is so important in that way. And so I saw this position come up where it was this nice blend of being able to have this sort of outreach and being able to be a translator for our audiences and get folks engaged with all the amazing research that's being done out there and help folks understand why this research is so important, even though one study might be super niche, but what's the bigger picture? Why does this matter? And why should you care in the end? And so I feel like it was the sum of those experiences that led me to this spot, whether it was in anthropology as a forensic anthropologist or whether it was at a museum. And so I think it's worked out really well. And as you know, I've always been really passionate about informal learning. So that's kind of what led me to this role, because like I said, museums are one of those rare third spaces that are left that give people an environment to learn informally and have, get to be around experiences and exhibits that cost a large sum of money that you can't have at home. And so I just really love that idea and being able to inspire folks who come to our museum and even digitally as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Of course, we need to have you back to really dissect that journey. In fact, we have a whole separate program that does that, exactly that, the Changemaker program that gets into the nuts and bolts of people's pathways into various civic science careers. Rose, I wish we can just keep chatting. And in this last minute, I wonder if you can just share, for those who are listening, you're scientists, you're practitioners, right? And maybe even funders. Can you give us a framework of how they can get involved with the museum, some of the activities that are ongoing, and with reference to the next 12, 24 months, right? So keep in mind what you're trying to do now over the next 12 months. Where are points of engagement that scientists, practitioners, funders might want to reach out to you about over the next 12 months?
Yeah. So I mentioned a couple of our programs, the Science After Dark, Science on Tap, but we also have Minds of All Kinds. And so that's that low stimulus after hours event for people to experience. We have people tabling at all of these events. And we're also looking for people, if they're interested in providing activities. We always welcome that sort of partnership as well. And, even if your goals and your missions don't align with something that you're seeing within each of those programs, we're more than happy to explore other ways that we can support the work that the community or a partner is doing elsewhere in the museum as well. And so I really encourage people to reach out, and I can help explain all of the different events that we have going on and see where we can make a partnership work and make that fit.
Dr. Martha, looking forward to having you back very soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Muindi.